In 1770, an inventor named Wolfgang von Kempelen unveiled the Turk, a mechanical chess player in Ottoman robes that seemed to be able to beat grandmasters and even impress Napoleon. It looked like a miracle, a machine that appeared to think. Now jump to 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. You're grading chemistry lab reports or social studies guides, and the work looks suspiciously clean. The formatting is crisp, every comma in its rightful place, and one hopeful, fleeting second you think, maybe the breakthrough happened. Maybe they finally got it. But the Turk was a trick. There was a very cramped, very talented human hidden inside the cabinet, pulling levers behind the scenes to make the wooden arms move. And in our classrooms, AI Help Me is the new Mechanical Turk. Sometimes it means a student got a hint and kept going. Sometimes it means that the tool did the hard part and the student just turned in the smoke. And when you ask the student, walk me through your process, and you see the floor disappear, you're not looking at understanding. You're looking at a cabinet with a hidden lever. If we never teach students the difference, we should not be surprised when they pick the faster option. I'm Peter Weise. I've been teaching for over 20 years, and this show is for secondary teachers trying to keep learning authentic in an AI-saturated world. Today, we're opening the cabinet. We're talking about how to train students to use AI as a coach, not a substitute. We'll get into the hint ladder, study guide repair, and simple routines to keep the thinking where it belongs, with the human. So let's define our first line. AI is acting like a coach when it helps students think, check, explain, and try again. AI is acting like a substitute when it performs the thinking the student was supposed to do. Here's the simplest test I've got. If you can close the tab and still explain the move, it was probably coaching. Close the tab, keep the knowledge. Open the tab, rent the knowledge. I want them to own it. The mistake we make is thinking students already know what good help looks like. They do not. They know fast. They know easy. They know polished, but they do not automatically know the difference between support and replacement. Our job is to train for the kind of help that leaves the learning with the students. First move, the hint ladder. In physics, we talk about static friction. It is the force that you have to overcome to get an object to move. Once it's sliding, it's easier, but that first stuck moment is the hardest. The hint ladder is not meant to push a box across the room for a student. It's meant to break the initial static friction so that they can do the pushing. Instead of the vague, help me with this, we teach 4 verbs: hint, ask, check, quiz. Not do, not solve, not write. Hint, ask, check, quiz. If I'm in chemistry and the students are stuck on dimensional analysis, the weak prompt is explain this problem. The coach problem is ask me one question that will help me choose the right conversion factor. Or tell me the first quality I should identify but do not solve it. Or check whether my units are set up correctly but do not finish it. That is coach language. If I were saying this to students, it would sound like this. Start on paper first. Give yourself a real attempt before asking for help. If you get stuck, ask for one hint, not the answer. If you ask for help, you should be the one asking the next move. That's the routine. Students make the first attempt, then they use one coach-style prompt. Then they revise their work, then they write one sentence about what changed. Maybe the sentence is, I realized I was flipping the conversion factor the wrong way because I was not tracking the target unit. That sentence matters, because what I'm looking for is not whether the final answer is correct. I'm looking for ownership. Can the student give me a decision point? Can the student explain the stuck point? Can the student tell me what the hint changed? That is evidence of learning. Now, a quick digression. Some people hear this and think, so you're just making it harder. No, this is about productive struggle. In biology, if a chick does not struggle to break its own shell, its lungs don't fully develop. The struggle is part of what lets it survive. We're not being mean by withholding the answer, we're letting them breathe. If this goes sideways, the fix is usually not huge. Tighten the prompt verbs. If students are getting substitute work, it's often because their language invited substitute work. So I would stop and try to say, try that again. Ask for a hint. Ask for a question. Ask for a check. Do not ask for it to perform. That tiny shift matters a lot. Here's the brain checkpoint. Students do need support, especially when the task is new, complex, or overloaded with steps. Working memory is limited. Novice learners benefit from help. That part is not controversial. But support helps most when it reduces overload without removing the decision making. That means the goal is not more struggle just for the sake of struggle. The point is productive struggle. Enough support to keep moving, not so much support that the student never has to think. And that is why this episode is not anti-help. It's anti-outsourcing. It's pro-hint, pro-check, pro-self-explanation, pro-extra practice, but all of that only works if the student still has to do the thinking. So when the student says, but I was just using it for help, the follow-up question is not, did you use AI? The follow-up question is, what part still belongs to you? That is the question. Now let's go to move 2, study guide repair. A lot of students now think that a study guide is something that appears. They ask for one, they get one. It looks neat, and they treat it like finished learning. But a clean summary is not the same as understanding. So this move changes the job. Do not treat AI-generated notes as the product. Treat them as the draft that the students have to verify and repair. This works really well in social studies, and I think this is where a lot of teachers will see the move right away. Imagine a world history class reviewing the causes of World War I. A student asks AI to generate a short study guide, fine. That part is easy. The learning is what happens next. Maybe the AI gives them something like this: militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, a clean list. Looks solid, very printable, maybe even suspiciously printable. But then the student has to compare that guide to notes, discussion, and to whatever source work the class already did. Now I want the student asking different questions. Is this accurate? Is this vague? What is missing? What sounds right but is too flat? For example, alliances increase tension. That's not exactly wrong, but it is weak. Which alliances? In what way? Did they increase tension by locking countries into obligations, by speeding escalation, by making a regional conflict harder to contain? That's where the learning lives. And nationalism is another great example. AI will often treat it like a vocabulary flashcard, but in class, maybe you talked about the Serbian nationalism differently than the German nationalism, or you connected it to specific events, groups, or identities. The AI draft will often smooth that all into something that sounds complete, but is actually just polished blur. So I would tell the students, generate a short study guide. Now compare it to your notes. Circle what is vague, cross out what is wrong. Add one class example that AI missed. Add one connection between ideas that AI flattened. Now the student is not just receiving information, they're evaluating it. And that matters because AI is very good at sounding complete when it's actually just a word salad cabinet. The repair is the learning. What students do is compare the guide to real class material. They identify what sounds right but lacks precision. They add class-specific details. They correct oversimplifications. They make the guide more useful by making it more accurate. And what I'm looking for is whether the student can tell the difference between polished and precise. Can they explain why a bullet is incomplete? Can they add a class-specific example? Can they show me how they know the difference between a tidy list and an actually helpful one? That is a useful skill far beyond AI. If this goes sideways, add friction. Do not let the students turn it into the raw output. Require markup, require color coding, require one note that says, this looked right at first, but it was incomplete because. That sentence is excellent because it forces judgment. And that, again, is the real target. Not, can a machine summarize? Yes, obviously. The better question is, can the student verify and improve the summary using what we actually learned in class? That is a much stronger classroom move. And it's not just social studies. In ELA, a colleague might have a student generate a quick review sheet on a theme, symbolism, or rhetorical appeals, then require them to replace vague wording with actual quotes or text-based evidence from pieces they studied. The AI can help draft the shell, but the student still has to provide the precision, the proof, and the judgment. Now let's go to move 3. Now I know what you're thinking, Peter. I teach art, or I teach PE, or I don't care about stoichiometry, or the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. But don't change the dial, stay with me, because this logic is universal. This is the Diagnostic Gate. When students ask for practice, they usually want the answers immediately. They want a better rhythm. Attempt first, check second, diagnose third. That's the sequence. So I might tell the students, after you solve one example on your own, ask for 3 more like it. Tell the tool not to show solutions yet. Do them yourselves, then reveal the answers. If you miss one, you have to name the type of mistake before you ask for an explanation. That sequence matters because it keeps the cognitive work with the student. They still retrieve, they still attempt, they still check, they still diagnose. What I'm looking for here is whether students can identify a pattern in their misses. What is a sign error? a unit problem, a vocabulary confusion, a weak example, a step order issue. If they cannot name this type of miss, they are not ready for the help yet. We are forcing the brain to name its own error. And if this goes sideways, that is the fix. Require the error type first. Before the explanation, say, tell me what kind of miss this was. That one move alone pulls students back into thinking. This is where math fits naturally too. In algebra, a colleague might have a student say, make me 4 problems like this with different numbers. Do not show the solutions until after I try them. Then the student solves, reveal answers, and for any miss they have to say what rule they may have applied incorrectly before they get any further help. That is AI as a coach. The tool is extending practice, not replacing the solving. And if you want one extra layer, you can add a tiny concept map after the practice. Not a giant poster, not a project, just 4 boxes. Task type, key idea, common mistake, how to check. That works in science, that works in math, that works in history, that works in writing. Because the key idea is not really the app, the key idea is making thinking visible. And this matters because students are growing up in a world where polished language can easily outrun actual understanding. If we don't teach them to verify, question, and explain now, they will carry that habit of trust without checking into much bigger parts of their life later. Pretty is not the same as understood. Articulate is not the same as accurate. And honestly, we are living in the first era of human history where the most articulate voice in the room might not actually have a brain. That should change how we teach. You do not need a full unit redesign for this. Try this as a 10-minute mini lesson. For the first minute, define the line, coach versus substitute. Then spend 2 minutes modeling one weak prompt and then one better one. This will give students a few minutes to rewrite one substitute prompt into a coach prompt. Then they have to try it with a real task. And end with this one question. What did the tool do, and what do I still have to do myself? That's enough. You don't need a giant rollout. You don't need a full unit redesign. You do not need 12 slides and a dramatic soundtrack. You need one clear distinction, a few better verbs, one real task, and one short reflection. Success looks like this. Students make a first attempt. Their prompt uses words like hint, ask, check, quiz. They can explain what changed in their thinking. And then you can talk to them. The understanding still belongs to them. If this goes sideways, shrink it even more. Teach just one move. Maybe it's just the hint ladder. Maybe it's just the first attempt rule. Maybe it's just the reflection sentence. This is still better than telling students to use AI responsibly and hoping for the best. I want to end here. I know that most cheating is not a character flaw. It's a survival strategy for an overwhelmed kid. They're not trying to be dishonest. They're trying to get to bed before midnight. If we do not give them a path to use these tools honestly, we are essentially handing them the lever to the Turk and then getting mad when they pull it. Training matters. Clarity matters. The classroom move matters more than the app. Do not just permit AI. Train them to use it in a way that leaves the thinking with them. That is the work. Thanks for listening to Science Wise. Send me your real unpolished classroom questions. Let's figure out where this is getting weird together.